everyone. Thank you for joining us all over the US. Thank you so much. This is Startup Legalities, Navigating Contracts and Governance for New Entrepreneurs. This webinar is perfect for those of you who are thinking of starting your own business or who are already starting your own business and you're thinking of growing it, and you're wondering about the legalities, the technical side of your business, especially the legal side of your business. We believe this is the perfect time for your questions to be addressed. But before doing that, before starting, next slide, please. Allow us to please orient you with the webinar etiquettes. Next slide, please. Okay, yes. So please keep your microphone muted to avoid background noise, unless, of course, called by the moderator. Submit your questions. Some of you already started submitting your questions in the chat box. You can definitely do so at any time, and we will address as many as possible during the Q&A session rather. And we believe your insights are valuable, and so we encourage you to engage with our speaker by using reaction icons or just celebrating our speaker in the chat as well. Okay, next slide, please. Now, if it's your first time in this community, this is G100, or basically the G100 movement. G100 is an influential group of 100 women leaders from across the world in 100 wings and sectors, supported by G100 eminent he/she champions and 100 country clubs in each wing for powerful advocacy, awareness, and impact across governments and global organizations for a gender equal future in this decade. Please click the next slide. Specifically, the wing that we are part of is what we call the G100 Education, Employment and Scholarship Wing. And this exists to support women and teens around the world as they pursue education, build confidence, and access scholarships that can change the trajectory of their lives. So basically, our mission is very, very simple. We want to create access, and we want to provide guidance, and we want to build community. Next slide, please. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker. Attorney Devlin has extensive experience as a corporate attorney, having worked in large law firms, as a solo practitioner and an in-house counsel. He has experience with public and private securities transactions, contracts, risk management, lending global enterprises, corporate governance, and M&A. Attorney Richard is also well-versed in general corporate law and has experience working with regulated industries. He has served as inside counsel for several corporations in the technology, SaaS, and investment services industries. He has a very long, very amazing credential. So why not let's give him a warm G100 welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Attorney Richard Devlin. Hi, Attorney. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, Lori. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Lori. My name is Rich Devlin. As Lori said, I am a corporate attorney, and I have been so for almost 30 years. And I'll also apologize for the slight delay. The technical difficulties were actually mine, not Lori's, so don't blame Lori. Anyway, welcome, everyone. I'm going to give a fairly high-level overview of a couple key points that you should think about when starting a business, primarily contracts and governance, corporate governance of how to run your business. So it'll be high-level, but we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I know some questions have already come in, so I'm curious to hear what you would like to know. But I guess I'll just get right into it. Lori, if you want to go to the next slide.
Kylie, yeah, there. Next slide again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you're just getting started, I guess this webinar is for you, right? There are all kinds of different businesses. It doesn't matter so much what kind it is, whether it's a service business, a restaurant, a store, an IT business, you've invented something, manufacturing, whatever. So the basic fundamentals of getting your business going are really pretty much the same. There are some specifics like for IT and technology with inventions and things, but for the most part, corporate governance and basic contract principles are the same. And you really should know them before you get too far into actually operating a business, right? So I'm going to go over these points in terms of sort of real world issues. I'm not just going to give you theory or talk about case law or any of that stuff, because nobody really wants to know all this stuff. You just want to know what to do, right? So the reason why these two things are important is because you make a lot of decisions every day and they seem very basic. Maybe they seem harmless. Maybe they seem very important, but when it comes to running a company, there are some legal overlays that you should keep in mind because it protects you going forward. A lot of people start with, great ideas, high hopes, very optimistic, and you need that, of course, but you have to protect yourself for things that you're not thinking about. That's really where technical sort of good writing, good governance, and legal help comes in, because you don't always know what's going to happen, right? Despite how optimistic we all are when we start. So, yeah, those are really our two topics. We'll start with contracts, and then I'll go into a little bit of basic corporate governance for when you start your business. I think we can move on, Lori.
Next slide, Anya.
Next slide. Yep. Okay. So this is what I mentioned: contracts and governance. Contracts are your relationships with everyone outside of your business and inside, but your relationships with others are governed by contracts. Governance is your internal decision-making process and sort of your internal rules for how you run things inside. People on the outside don't really see it for the most part, unless there are problems later, then it might come up. But those are sort of the two basics: outward facing and then internal facing, contracts and governance. So I'll go over each. Let's see. You can move ahead, Lori. Next slide. Okay. So we probably all have a good idea of what a contract is. It's an agreement, right? It's an agreement to do something, and I always recommend certainly that they be written down. I mean, that's by far the best way to do it. It is possible to have a verbal contract, or what you might call a handshake deal. Two people agree to do something, they shake hands, they have a contract. Technically, they do. The four basic requirements of any contract, which you learn basically in your first year of law school, are the offer, the acceptance, consideration, and then performance. They're fairly self-explanatory. Offer is, you're offering either to buy something or to do something or to do something for someone else. The acceptance is when the other side agrees. There's a meeting of the minds, everyone agrees. Consideration, sometimes, believe it or not, is overlooked. That is the value that is being given in both directions. One side is usually money, and the other side is usually either a product or a service, something like that. Both could be services, both could be money, but it doesn't matter. But value has to go each way. And if it doesn't, then you really just have kind of a promise, not really a contract, right? So believe it or not, I've seen contracts written that people thought were contracts, but when you look closely, somebody's not giving any value, right? So they thought they had a contract, and technically they didn't. And the fourth aspect is performance. That's where you do what you said you were going to do in the contract. Let's see. So once you have those, also important, of course, is what does it say, right? It's easy when your business is small to sort of not formalize things, but what I'm going to talk about pretty soon is some of the risks of operating that way. And I kind of already mentioned it. Your you're optimistic at first, but you have to account for things that you're not expecting, and that's what a good contract will do for you. And like I don't know if it's on the slide, but figuring it out later is not really the best option, because sometimes you can figure it out, but sometimes it's not possible, or you're not going to figure it out in the way that you wanted it to be. So documenting exactly what you need in a written contract is very critical. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Laura, because I want to give some more detail here. Yeah, it wasn't the slide. We'll figure it out later. Very risky, because what I do for people is try to figure out everything that can go wrong now and address it before it goes wrong. That's really the value that you get out of having a contract reviewed or prepared by an attorney, or at least having a good, solid contract. I have a kind of a funny story about this. I had a client tell me once that a contract was far too long and I should take out what he called all the useless legal language that's in there, right? Somebody actually said that to me. And I had to say to him, it's certainly not useless. You just might not need it today, right? And hopefully you never need it. But you don't want to be in a position where you wish the contract had addressed the situation and it doesn't, because that's where the problems come up. So if you're reading through what looks like sort of standard language, usually it's at the end, not always, but it can be at the end of the contract, or boilerplate language, as we call it. It's all there for a reason. It's been developed over really centuries of people running into problems and putting in these basic things that just address so much. So you don't want to leave that out. It really all does have a purpose. There's not enough time to go into the purpose of every one of those sections that you've probably seen, but yeah, it is certainly not useless. It's very important to you to protect yourself and your company and the deal that you're trying to achieve, right? Trying to close, or the goal you're trying to achieve. So we don't like informal agreements. We like them to be fully documented so that everybody knows exactly what to expect. That's really the primary reason you do it. You know what to expect when almost anything happens. Because if it's not in there, nobody knows what to expect, and it's a little bit of a free-for-all. You don't know how to handle situations. So that's why we don't like informal agreements. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yes, templates. Okay. So I've thought about this a bit. Templates can be a great resource. I have a lot of templates that I use, but they're a starting point, right? Now, in the days of the internet, which are not new anymore, but there are a lot of templates that you can find for almost anything. Some of them are very good. Some are not. The problem with the sort of do-it-yourself approach with a template is you may not know where it came from, or why it was written, or why everything that's in there is in there, right? What comes up more often today, similar to the template problem, is AI-generated contracts. And again, some of them are excellent. There are AI programs that do a very good job, but they're not perfect, right? The AI systems are really following your commands, but they're not thinking like a human. And I've learned recently there are businesses and industries growing up around the concept of taking your AI generated contracts and finding a human lawyer to fix them or look at them or approve them. There's a gap there between what AI can do for you and what a human being can do for you. As good as it is, and they look great, but the AI doesn't know you, maybe doesn't know your preferences, never had a conversation with you, doesn't necessarily know exactly what you need, something that will cover you in all situations. I mean, you can prompt and prompt and prompt and give it a lot of information, and it will get better and better, but it's still a potentially risky template, right? Unless it's very simple and clearly there's no room for sort of judgment, but that's not as common, right? So now I use AI to help me. I certainly don't use the results as they come. So it's fine to use it. I'm not telling you not to use it. I'm just saying if it's a really important contract, or really any contract for your business, it's be aware that there's a little bit of a risk there, that it's not thinking the way a human would. So templates and AI contracts, they look great, they sound good, but do they really fit? It's very hard to know without sort of putting some actual thought into it and getting to know you and your business and what you're trying to achieve. So they're good and bad. Let's see. Okay, let's move on. I have an example of, I spoke about this. What every contract should do, I spoke about. I gave you the 4 basics of what's required to create a contract, but what it should do, besides have those 4 components, is basically touch on everything that is going to happen, that you want to happen, and how you want it to happen, right? We talked about those boilerplate provisions that you hopefully don't need, but you may. That's what the last bullet here is. What happens if something goes wrong, right? It needs to be addressed. What happens when it's not addressed is people just start suing each other or walking away. People don't get paid, or they don't know how to pay or how much. You have to really construct these things in a way that addresses sort of the process when things go right and when things go wrong. So it takes some experience with reading contracts to know if you're well covered. Some of the templates and AI contracts that I've seen, for example, don't have this in there. If you didn't tell it to do that, it might not do it, right? So you're kind of exposed. People tend to think of lawyers as being kind of like negative, right? Like we say no to a lot. It's not that. In trying to protect your interests, we want to cover a lot of possible things because we've seen a lot of bad things happen, right? So that's the reason why things get kind of verbose, and you might wonder why these provisions are in there. Dispute resolution or indemnification. Where do we have a dispute? What state, what court, what country, and when, and how fast do we have to do it? So it seems maybe excessive to some people to put all that detail in there, but when you're in that situation, it's nice to have it on paper to tell you exactly how things are going to go, not just wonder or be at the mercy of somebody else who's suing you on their own terms, right? So the more detail is, from my perspective, always better because it's covering more and more situations that you're not thinking about. Okay, let's move ahead one slide to contractors versus employees. So when you're beginning your business, I think this is a fairly common situation that folks run into. You need some help. You can't do it all on your own. So do you hire an independent contractor or do you hire an employee? Either way, you should have a written contract with these folks. But they're very different. They're really not the same, and there are risks of choosing the wrong one, or more important for this discussion is not describing it properly. You might end up with a result that you didn't want. And I'll tell you what I mean. It's on the slide, it says misclassification risk. So I think we all know what an employee is. You've hired them, they work for you, that's their job, they're your employee. Okay, that's pretty clear. A contractor is someone who also does work for you, but they're not your employee. They have a contract with you that says, right, what they're going to do and basically what you're going to pay them, but they're not an employee. So what's the difference, right? If someone's an employee, a lot of other rules kick in, right? Like tax withholding. If you have a benefit plan, they have to receive benefits, right? If they're fired, if you've paid your unemployment taxes for them, then they get unemployment, right? Paid time off, vacation, other perks of being an employee. An independent contractor is, as it sounds, independent. They are not an employee. They can work for other people at the same time, right? They may not even come into your office. It depends on what they need to do, but it's sort of on the lighter side of employment, right? They do some work for you pursuant to a contract, but they're not an employee. And this matters because, and this comes up, it can come up in the US, but it comes up for sure in other countries where they have much more stringent protections for the workforce. If you can call someone an independent contractor, but the law is going to decide whether they were a contractor or an employee, for example. And I've seen this happen. You can call someone an independent contractor, but if you're telling them exactly what hours they have to work, right, what tools to use, you give them time off, vacation, it starts to look a lot like an employee, right? And in some countries, if they quit or get fired, they can come back at you really and say, I should have been classified as an employee, not a contractor. And then the consequences are you owe them back benefits, right? Back vacation time. You didn't pay taxes for them. You didn't withhold tax. It becomes a mess. So the distinction can be very important. And of course, all those distinctions are laid out clearly in a contract, hopefully, right? Either an employment contract, that's clear, or the independent contractor agreement, which is going to sort of lay out all the things that keep them as a contractor, definitely not an employee. So just don't want you to sort of be too informal about what you're calling people or who you think you've hired in what capacity. It needs to be clear for your own benefit later, right? Well, now and later, right? Okay, so that's an example of a sort of contracting issue that a lot of you might face. Let's move onward. Okay, and we can come back to contract questions at the Q&A. I know that was kind of high level. I didn't touch a lot of specifics, but let me know what your questions are later. So part 2 is the governance structure. This is your internal decision-making process. And whether you have a corporation or a limited liability company or a limited partnership or any other entity other than just sort of yourself as a sole proprietor, you should have a corporate governance system. And some of it, especially with corporations, some of it is right in the certificate of incorporation, right? So you need to file that to create it, and you can put some of your governance rules in there. But sometimes they're very sparse. They're just like a one-pager and they don't have much corporate governance. So that's what you would have bylaws for, or in an LLC, you would have something called an operating agreement, which is really, bylaws and an operating agreement are essentially the same thing, just for different kinds of entities. And those will lay out certain aspects of how internal operations work, meaning like who are the directors, how many directors, who votes, which shareholders vote, did they all vote, or how many votes do they have, when do you have meetings, what needs to be approved by the board, what needs to be approved by shareholders. These are all slightly technical things from the corporate law of the state where you're formed, but you need to follow them, right? So not having them means you're kind of not necessarily knowing exactly what to do. And having them clearly written will provide a pretty easy roadmap. And it's more than just following sort of what the state law says in terms of things like voting and shareholder meetings, things like that. It's important for really contracting and doing business and doing deals and major transactions. I think we can go ahead one slide, because part of the corporate governance system has to do with the authority of people within your company, who can do what and when, what approvals do they need, right? For example, if, let's say your company is signing a fairly significant contract with another company, and maybe one of your employees is a vice president and he signs it for the company. Now, as far as the outside party knows, that's fine. They have a valid contract, right? But what if you never authorized that vice president to sign a contract, right? So there you're in a little bit of trouble because the third party probably was justified in thinking he could sign it. So that's called apparent authority. It looked like he could sign it, and he did. So the other party can probably hold you to that contract, right? Whether or not he had the actual authority to sign a contract. So if you keep things written down and clear and sort of follow your governance documents, like your bylaws, that kind of thing shouldn't happen. And even if someone does, there's kind of a consequence, right? Like you want to have a roadmap of knowing what to do in that situation. It's as you get into slightly more sophisticated parties, they might ask you before doing a major transaction, who's going to sign this and prove to me that they have the authority to do it. That's often referred to as an incumbency certificate, where they ask for who can authorize this deal, show me what their signatures look like, and give me that ahead of time so I know when they sign it, they were allowed to sign it. If you've done that and somebody else who's not on that list signs it, then you can get out of the contract because they had no actual or apparent authority. So that's just an example of sort of how governance can impact day-to-day business operations. It really all helps you to have an easy to understand model and to follow it and to keep documentation of every major decision and authorities granted, and votes and any major event should be covered by those governance documents. And you want to keep those records current, right? Part of what they may do is say, what level of transaction needs to be approved by, say, a board of directors or by a majority of the shareholders. For things like that, you want to make sure you're actually getting that director approval, or you're actually holding that shareholder vote and keeping a record of it. Because without it, if it was so material that, say, the shareholders had to approve it and they didn't, obviously that's a problem. Or if they did, but you didn't write it down, you really can't prove it, right? So corporate governance is not just the framework for how to do things, but your records of what you've done. Really, really very critical for having a complete set of what they call books and records, right? And knowing that everything was done properly and by the right people. Okay, let's move ahead one. Okay, I covered this. You need to know who can make decisions, who can sign documents. One thing I didn't touch on is here where it says founders acting individually versus for the company. This does happen, especially in a startup, a brand new company, or very small. You don't want to mix, obviously, your personal and your business finances, but you shouldn't mix personal and business, accounts, systems, services, because it gets very hard to prove what was done for the company and what was done personally, right? Like if your company is really small and it needs some funding and you want to fund it personally or continue to do that, don't just pay bills out of your personal bank account, right? Take the money from your personal bank account, put it in the company's account, document it, and then there's a clear record. What belonged to the company, what was a contribution by you, and what was your personal business. If you run into people trying to get out of agreements or avoid some kind of transaction, they can actually attack the transaction or the contract on the basis of sort of improper authority, or it was commingled personal and business interests and violated corporate law, something like that. So not blurring the lines between what's personal and what's business is also part of good governance, and accounting and taxes, but governance definitely. Okay, let's go to the next. Yeah, the pattern. So the pattern really is what I've been talking about, right? There's the proper way to document, record either your internal decisions or your contractual matters. And then there's the kind of flexible, informal way. And when it's done informally or not written down, like I mentioned before, you don't really know what to expect. Yeah. Well, let me back up a little bit. You might know what you are expecting at the beginning when you go in, but if problems arise, which unfortunately they do often, you need to know what to expect in terms of how to solve and how to address those problems. What happens next, step by step. That's where clear contracts come into play and clear governance rules come into play. It really helps you keep things sort of straight and narrow. It's decided before things happen, how they're going to happen, when, by whom. That's really the point of all this. It makes your life easier and less risky and keeps things clear. It's tempting to be informal, especially when things are really small and you're just getting going. But correcting things later is, worse, more expensive than sort of doing them right the first time. That's really another core point of this presentation. Okay. What's next, Lori?
Okay. Next.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think that was as brief as I could make it and fairly high level. I will say that if you have already begun a business and you're not sure if you have things set up properly, we can certainly help you with sort of a review of your basic corporate governance documents or your most important contracts. When we form businesses for clients, we're kind of doing that as we go, but we can also go back in time and sort of give you a checkup and fix things that seem like they need to be fixed. My firm does give a consult for free at first, so you can sort of decide if you like us. We can decide what help you need, and you can decide if you want to move forward. So that first phone call, half an hour, is no charge. We just sort of get to know each other and see what might be needed. And attendees of this presentation will give you a percentage off of our rates for at least the first year for being part of this presentation. That's my only little pitch. You can go to the next slide, Laura.
All right. I think the next slide is just the Q&A. So
yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Attorney Devlin. That was such a very clear and insightful presentation. Simple, but very clear. You helped us, that was such a technical topic that you're covering, right? But I love how you made it more palatable to all of us, right? And to all of you, let's give Attorney Devlin a warm virtual applause. All right. Thank you. And yes, just like what Attorney Devlin mentioned earlier, because you are here with G100 today, he is offering a free initial consultation and a special discount to help you check your startup's health. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of our attendees have questions. So let's go ahead straight to the to our Q&A. And our tech Anya here also downloaded, or you can freely download it. Attorney Devlin also prepared a startup contracts and governance health check free handout. So thank you so much, Attorney Devlin, for preparing that. You can download it to everyone who's attending. You can download it and feel free to maximize that resource. Now we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's start with Alex V. I think this is very hard, I believe, because yeah. So I would just read it. Would you mind telling me how legal something like this would be? I'm an immigrant legally. It would be a lot more complicated for me to start a business or company, right? So would it be legal for me to have someone else start a business or company and then sell it? It's hard, right? Okay.
Probably yes. Now, I'm not an immigration attorney. You're really getting into issues of what kind of visa you have and what you're allowed to do on your visa. So if you already have an immigration attorney, I would definitely ask them. But if somebody else wants to start a business and sell it to you later, as long as that is okay under your visa, then sure, that's fine, right? And I've had clients who are here on various visas where they couldn't be employed. I think this was a while ago. I think they were allowed to be um, a shareholder, but not in active management because that's like having a job. So the bottom line is it really all depends on what kind of visa you have and what exactly you want to do. But if somebody wants to sell you something later, that's probably going to be fine. Not knowing any of the details sounds okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, attorney. Yeah, if you wish to give more details, you can also freely do so. But we have another question
Yeah.
from Kushik. Let's say I'm reviewing a contract. What are some red flags that I should immediately look out for as an entrepreneur?
Oh, okay. Um, it's a hard question, not knowing what kind of contract you're talking about. But the first test really is, what seems fair to you. Like, just think about what you're being asked to do, or to give up, or to pay, or conversely, what you're getting. Sometimes things can be really out of balance, right? And this is the tricky part because sometimes if you're doing this on your own and the other party is maybe a little more sophisticated, um, maybe it's a bigger company, or maybe their lawyer did it, they might be taking advantage of you and you might not know it, right? Like some of the, it's like read the fine print, right? Like, what does the indemnification look like? Is there a limitation on damages, right? It might be a contract for something small, like it might be $1,000 transaction, right? But you don't want to get sued for there's a term of art called consequential damages, right? Like, say you breached the contract and then they in turn lost another huge contract with another customer because of what you did. This was $1,000 contract. You don't want to get sued for $500,000 because of their other lost deal, right? You can cover that stuff in a contract. It's a little bit technical, but you want to limit your exposure, really. So I'm going to leave it there. Like, we could really get into this for a long time, but let's not do that.
Okay. Thank you, attorney. Another one. I think we have a couple of students watching as well, because again, this is also for teens,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
like applying for scholarships and education. So
great.
a unique a question from Anya. What was your education path to get to your current position? Thank you.
Oh, okay. My education path was fairly simple. I went to college, and I went straight to law school after college. Um, Mostly because I didn't know what else to do at the time, right? It seemed like it would be interesting. Well, I mean, I studied business. I guess I'll give you a little more detail. I studied finance as an undergrad, and I knew I wanted to get into business. But I didn't really want to start with like a sales job or something like that. I wanted to approach business from what I thought was a more interesting perspective. So I thought being a business's lawyer would be a little more interesting than just being like a sales guy, starting out. Um, so I went that route, and that basically worked. I mean, I was also interested in investing at the time, so I took a lot of securities law classes and learned a lot about fundraising and private placements and public offerings, and that's the kind of work I've done ever since.
Okay, another question from Alex. Take Tesla and its open source patent policy, provided the other company also open up its own patents and doesn't violate or not act in good faith. Is that an accurate description of loosely worded or informal agreements?
Oh, were you quoting was that a quote from an agreement?
I'm not
I
sure.
can't see it, so I'm only listening.
Yeah. So take Tesla and its open source patent policy, provided the other company also open up its own patents and doesn't violate or not act in good faith. Is that an accurate description of loosely worded or informal agreements? That's the question.
It sounds like it. Yes, it sounds. There's not much it sounds pretty loose to me, just based on what I heard. Unless I'm misunderstanding the question. If you can't tell what it's saying, then it's probably not well written, right?
Okay, another question from Kushik. If I have a unique idea or product that I want to bring to the market, what immediate steps should I take to protect myself and my idea from being copied by competition? And what is something that I should definitely not do?
That's a great question. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
good question.
this is why patent law and trademark and copyright law all exist to protect inventors, right? Um, Now, getting a patent is not like super simple. It takes a long time and it's kind of costly, right? Um, but if you think you're going down that road, if you have a novel, brand new invention that nobody else has ever thought of before and it's yours, immediately start trying to get a patent, or what they call a provisional patent, which is sort of like an early version where may not even be finished with it yet, but you get some protection. Um, and if you can't do that yet, then the most important thing you can do really is keep it to yourself, right? Like, don't tell anyone else who might be in a similar business who can think it's a great idea and patent it themselves first, right? So work on it and get it working. You can even get a business going around it, or a business set up, in anticipation of being able to patent it. But if you want to show customers or people doing like a trial or something of your technology, non-disclosure agreements are absolutely required. You need to legally bind them to not talk about what you just showed them. That's sort of the first and easiest step. And I know I told you not to use templates, but there's a lot of templates for non-disclosure agreements out there. Maybe take a look at those and then have a lawyer check it for you. But anyway, start with what's called an NDA. Don't let anybody who might steal it see it. Definitely not without an NDA, but even if they have one, if you don't have to show them what's really your novel invention, don't. And then try to get patent protection as soon as possible.
What a great question that was. Okay, in
Mm.
relation to that, I think this is a follow-up question from another person, so I bring this up.
Yeah.
How often does one need to replenish a patent? Or do you have, this is a student asking, that's why.
Oh,
Mhm.
I'm not a patent lawyer. I believe patents last 14 years.
Ooh, okay.
That's something you could Google though. That's what I would Google it. A patent lawyer would know off the top of their head. I don't do patents, but you get many years for an initial patent. Um, think of like pharmaceutical companies, right? Like they have a patent on their drugs for, I'm pretty sure it's 14 years, and then all of a sudden generic versions become available. That's because their patent ran out.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have someone who also typed it in the chat, Naumika. Her question is, do all companies need to have some kind of legal insurance, even for low risk ones like clothing?
Uh, I mean, just like regular insurance, like liability insurance. I mean, it's never required. It's a matter of your risk tolerance, right? Like if you're in a business where probably nobody's going to get hurt, somebody's not going to slip and fall in your factory, or you're not stealing other people's technology, like insurance might be cheap for you. I hate to say don't get insurance because I wouldn't really recommend that. If you're running a business, it's definitely a good risk mitigator. It's good to protect yourself with some kind of insurance. But unless you're signing a deal with somebody and that deal requires you to have insurance, there's no legal requirement to get it. It's just usually a smart thing to do.
Okay, thank you for that, attorney. I think this is the last question from Harish. For contractor versus employee, what's the best way to avoid loopholes and lawsuits between the distinctions of both titles, respectively?
Ah, that's a great question. Um, So if you want to hire an independent contractor, um, what I would, well, first you need an independent contractor agreement that actually clearly says you're independent. You basically work how you want, and when you want, all you're responsible for is delivering me what I asked for. Um, um, you don't get benefits, you don't get time off. We're completely independent. You can't bind the company, like you're not signing anything on behalf of the company. So the agreement is one thing. And then I would do a little looking into the employment laws wherever they live. If it's in the US, it's pretty easy. But if they live, maybe they're in India, maybe they're in South America or something, the laws vary widely as to how closely these countries are going to protect workers, right? Um, and in that country or that jurisdiction, um, you look for sort of what are indicia of employment, right? Which is often like requiring them to come to a certain place for certain specific hours, right? Giving them time off, benefits, vacation, like I mentioned. Um, if you're giving them any of that, then they might be classified as an employee, which you don't want, right? So I guess it's really two aspects. One is what does the actual contract say? Is it clear? And where are we talking about, and how strict do we have to be? Because it varies widely from country to country. It doesn't vary that widely from state to state within the U.S. Not really. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. Can we just give another round of virtual applause to Attorney Devlin for patiently and very clearly, wow, we have a lot of applause there.
Yeah, thanks. Thank
Very
you.
clearly answering all our questions. And if you want to claim your free checkup or you have more questions, you can definitely email Attorney Devlin at richard.devlin@novojuris.com, right? Or visit
Right.
their firm's website. I also pasted it in the chat right now, so feel free to check that. And to those of you who wants to, be part or to watch or be an attendee to many more free webinars of G100, please follow us here to stay connected. You can also just search G100 Education, Employment, and Scholarships USA in LinkedIn. And for those of you asking, yes, this is a global women movement, but we have what we call a denim club partner. Hence, we have male allies like Attorney Richard Devlin here with us. So yeah, that's G100. Yeah, a lot of them, they're saying thank you for answering all our questions from Kushik. And to all of you, before you go, make sure to click the link in the chat to download your startup contracts and governance health check. You might want to utilize that resource. Thank you so much again, Attorney Devlin. Thank you for gracing your very precious, for sure, you're very busy, but thank you for gracing your very precious time to us for this free webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori. Great job. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone who attended. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a great evening. Take a good rest, Attorney.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Bye.